I'm alive. I shouldn't be.
He should not be alive. This is unfucking believable.
From the heart of trucker America, my boy Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist Capitalist.
This is what government does. It sucks.
If you think you're going to win people over by stating commonplaces, you're just selling the other part.
It is about dictating every transaction that you have for the rest of your life.
Mr. Potato Head.
Coverdale is the guy to be president of the United States.
You intimidated me with your perfect 74 stat.
That was the beginning of my problems.
He died doing what he loved, chasing a minor.
But I'll put a 50 cal attached to my Suburban.
Libertarians need to get out of New York.
The gulag is going to be in your house.
This guy's a fucking murderer. He deserves to be in a
Gotta get him out of that truck at night and get him into the White House.
Hey guys, hope everyone's having a great Sunday night right now. I had a good weekend. It was my brother's bachelor parties getting hitched next weekend, so pretty exciting. I might be kind of busy this week, but I'm going to try to get a few podcasts out. Anyway, as you might remember in the past, we used to try to once a month or so do a capitalist communion with me, Will Bell, Liam McCollum, and Jacob Daniel, Biblical Anarchy 3, Winograd, or whatever his name is. And we haven't done one since, I think, April. So it's been a while. But we got all the boys back here tonight. We got Will Bell, Liam McCollum, and Jacob Daniel, Biblical Anarchies 3, What is your name? Like, we still have
that is my name. I legally changed it to all of those things just so that no matter what someone calls me, they're correct.
That's a good idea. I guess that works. Most of us have blueberry wine. I messed up. I don't have any blueberry wine tonight. There is some in New Hampshire with me, but it's at my parents' house. I brought it over there and they love it, and I forgot to bring it here. So I'm sorry. But
I almost did something worse. Put it in a glass. So
man, yeah, it's out of the bottle.
I have it in a little plastic cup that I got from the LPPA convention, but it's a step up from drinking it straight out of the bottle because Will gives me shit for doing that. So
Will, you got a nice wine glass with you? So we a lot has happened since we last spoke. The three of us, meaning the three important guys, me, Will, and Liam, we've met twice, once at Reno and then again at Young Americans for Liberty. And Jacob has just been he's been working on trannies in Pennsylvania the whole time, too busy to come hang out with us. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been busy, actually trying to grow the Liberty movement by having kids. I'm trying to go for the mantle that Josh has right now in terms of the most kids in the Liberty movement. So, I'm in second place, but he's got a lap on me, so I still got a long ways to go, but we'll get there.
There you go. But yeah, Will, Liam, and I guess we can talk about Reno. That was kind of a long time ago now, but Will was representing Georgia, Liam representing Montana, and I was representing Utah. That was quite the experience. It was Will kind of jumped on last minute, wasn't going to make it, and made it out there. What did you think about it, Will, about the convention?
Oh, it was great. I had a good time. I had a good time watching you sit there just wallowing in agony as they went through all the policy and procedure.
It was rough.
But, yeah, it was a great time. It was cool seeing the whole Mises mission be accomplished and everything. It was sad seeing some of our more liberal friends cry about it, but
oh, come on, sad? That was the most entertaining part of the whole thing. I had fun.
I still want to know if Nicholas Sarwark is all right, because that was a brutal assault that he had to endure, and
it was.
I still believe that justice will be served.
What about you, Liam?
Yeah, I have a video of you somewhere slumped over. I think by the second day you were just passed out in the back. But yeah, no, I had a ton of fun. I'm surprised we actually made it through every single thing that we wanted to do. The biggest reason I was there was to get the abortion plank removed. Regardless of wherever we stand personally, I think if we want to grow this movement, the best thing is to not stand on it at all, and just talk about everything else like war. And that was pretty huge. I know many people in Montana who are now joining the party simply because we don't take a stance on abortion. I have some people who are pro-choice that have joined the party because we don't take a stance on it. So I mean, overall, I'm really happy with where it's going. And since Reno, I've taken on a larger role with the Mises Caucus. I'm doing like the stuff with the Ask an Austrian podcast right now. And I'm really excited to see what comes down the road, because there's a lot planned, a lot's been going on behind the scenes, and there should be some big announcements coming out soon.
Yeah, well, you're going down the right path when you trigger the paleos and the libs at the same time, and removing the abortion plank did both, because of course the libs were just like, oh no, women have a right to an abortion and yada, and then all the paleos were just like, if you don't make it a pro-life party, then you're still just a leftist. So I mean, I had mixed feelings on it, but then seeing the reaction was just like, nah, I think that was probably the right call, because it pissed off both of the right groups.
I will say I have been the one responsible for missing like the last 3 podcasts, but every time we've had the chance to all get together, Jacob was not there.
Ooh, that is a fair statement right there.
Again, that's because I'm busy knocking up my wife. Meanwhile, Liam, we had to put through, conversion therapy because he was being such a freaking faggot. I mean,
we weren't taking advantage of him. He was willing the whole time.
It would have been okay if he was gay. It's just he was being such a faggot that we had to do something.
It's that Brokeback Mountain time.
So
well,
go ahead.
Now that Reed's moved east, I'm screwed. I have to, I don't know, scheduling has sucked with this new job. So the fact that you guys are 2 hours ahead of me, it really does not make it work.
East is the best, man. Freedom time.
I was saddest that I was gone when you guys voted on the bigotry plank, because that sounded like the most entertaining outcome of all. And I was in San Francisco when that happened. I was like, God damn it, I should have stayed an extra day. But
I forgot you left early.
I did. So I never voted to remove the bigotry plank, as much as I will probably get accused of
such a lawbert.
No, but I wasn't there to do it. Oh, trust me, you know how I would have voted if I were there, but
you would have been, this isn't far enough. You don't get the N-word into the plank into the platform somewhere, then it's still a SJW rotting flesh wound.
Exactly. Oh man. But yeah, all that aside, all the party politics that most people are going to find boring aside, how have you guys been doing with resisting CIA propaganda over the weekend about Iran? Let's piss some people off. What do you think, Will?
That's been pretty easy for me. Me and you've talked privately about this, but years ago, like when Hong Kong was popping off with China, I was corrected pretty rudely, but not really. Like Daniel McAdams corrected me, just kind of like being wishy-washy on the idea of just supporting it. This comes off harsh, but like when you're sitting there supporting the people that are revolting against their government as a libertarian, people are rubbed the wrong way. But like the more we swim in these circles and like see this thing, like when our government and our media and our intelligence agencies are all supporting the messaging behind a revolution, we should just shut our mouth about what's happening, back away, and just let whatever happens. And at the very least, don't perpetrate CIA talking points into the zeitgeist. And that's very hard to do sometimes when you really are, wanting to be sympathetic to situations like this in Iran.
I mean, all I know is that the death toll in Iran would be substantially lower if we could get the masking percentage up to 100%. Right now, it's just 50% of the population. So, I mean, if we can do that, we can stop the spread and we can save lives.
Yeah, I was saying that's how that's the indicator that this is CIA, because all the people in that video of women dancing over the fire last night, like they were all wearing masks. Like Iranians' mask rate was like low 40s, and the CDC absolutely hated them for that. But I mean, I know a little bit about like the history of Iran, especially like Operation Ajax, and the reason I'm like not buying into this at all, and I feel like there is the tendency for for libertarians really to like root for people that are overthrowing their government. But it's like, especially when you know the history of Iran, like you already know the U.S. government's involved there. There's no way they're not. So it's just like, why even mention or argue anything that could potentially argue the CIA's point for the neocons?
Plenty of people are doing it. Like plenty of people are just sitting there just regurgitating the same things that, Anderson
Cernovich had the most fucking brain dead take I saw on Twitter. He tweeted out, if Trump had been reelected, Iran would be free. His sanctions and murdering of Soleimani like pushed us toward freedom, and Joe Biden is trying to placate the regime, and it's his fault that Iranians are under subjugation.
What he means is not that if Trump were president, it's if Trump were president and Pompeo were the Secretary of State.
Yeah. Well, what I really Libertarian Party of New Hampshire really clapped back at him, pointing out that patriotism actually surged after the airstrike of Soleimani. It actually gave the Iranians an external force to hate. That was one of the low points for resistance against the Iranian regime, because there was an outside force attacking him. There were thousands of people in the streets burning American flags and Israeli flags. Isn't exactly like what motivates them to overthrow their government. Like this idea that if you attack them and you sanction them and starve them to death, they'll finally be like, okay, you know what? Fine. We're going to overthrow our government and embrace freedom and democracy or whatever. It's such a childish take. And it was actually, I was surprised with the trucker protest stuff. I supported the trucker protest in Canada. But the idea that we should just go and blockade a bunch of cities was what people were saying we should do in the United States. Just go blockade Houston and blockade Washington, D.C. and all these different cities until finally they say, okay, enough. And the people just have enough living in the cities and they say, okay, let's lift these mandates. And I was actually making the case, look, we know this doesn't work with sanctions overseas. If you just try to starve people out, they don't embrace what your message is. And that's actually ultimately what happened in some places in Canada. People just ended up hating the truck drivers instead of hating the government that was, putting the ridiculous, the ridiculous mandates down or whatever. So I was saying, if we do this in America, especially in red cities where they're not pushing these mandates anymore, you're just going to do nothing but give all these people who suddenly can't get groceries and can't get gas and everything, they're just going to hate the truck drivers. They're not going to start hating the government more and realize we need to end the Fed and bring the troops home and lift all the mandates or something. But people just think about this stuff very backward from reality, is how it actually plays out.
Yeah, Scott Horton, he always references this quote. I forget exactly what the title was. Some official in the Air Force, and it was a anonymous quote. But the guy essentially, it was the Iraq War, and after they imposed the sanctions on Iraq, there's this quote where the Air Force official says, "Take out your leader, and we will turn on your power, or we will fix your power," or something like that. So it's quite clearly sanctions are intended to force their people to overthrow their government, and they won't get rid of them until they do. But unfortunately, it just makes the people more dependent on their government. And it's not like Iranians are pro-Western. Most of them, if they're familiar with their history, and a lot of them are, they're familiar with British, Russian, and U.S. influence over Iran, and how it's essentially destroyed their potential of becoming a legitimate country in the region. Especially, a lot of them are motivated by the constitutional revolution in 1906. And that's kind of been the largest movement, other than the Islamic movement, it has been to bring back the Constitution that we overthrew in 1953. So it's not as if the Iranian people would cling to Western forces even if we weren't sanctioning them. So yeah, the whole thing's ridiculous, and the whole strategy is been corrupt. And honestly, like when you look at all of these regime change efforts, all of it has been shaped by the 1953 coup in Iran. The regime changes in Guatemala and Chile, and almost every single regime change since 1953 has been shaped by Operation Ajax. So,
can someone sanction our country so that we riot against our government to install a more libertarian government? Like, you know.
Well, I was going to make the point that, like, you know, when 9/11 happened, which is sort of like an attack or sanctioning us or whatever for what we are doing, you know, in Saudi Arabia and Iraq and support for Israel or whatever, like that's kind of like the closest thing you have to a version of like them trying to sanction us with whatever power they have. And what did that do to Americans? Did it make Americans go, oh man, wow, you know, these guys really have a point. Like we should kind of like, you know, listen to what they have to say. Like, no, of course not. It just made us go like, we need to go stomp some faces into the ground. And that's what we did. So the idea that it would be any different when we airstrike their general and then, you know, put more sanctions on them, they're not going to be like, you know, these Americans really have a good point about how much our government sucks. Like it's just not how people respond to that type of shit.
Let's restrict your, you know, let's restrict your liberty and let's like oppress you even more in response to your oppressive government. And then you'll somehow do the mental gymnastics to be like, yeah, obviously more liberty is the answer here. Because that's, I mean, if you do, you're going to do it in a way, like the only responses you're going to have are going to be like biased towards the people who are causing you harm. So like you might oppose your government, but it doesn't mean that like what you're going to advocate in its replacement is something good.
And the funniest thing about Iran is just so ironic. Like the CIA came up with the definition of blowback and is completely aware of this concept we're talking about in direct reaction to Operation Ajax. Like there was a 1954 report that the CIA wrote where they essentially said like, yeah, this is the specific type of operation we should be, every CIA officer should have in mind the potential of blowback with operations like this. And I mean, it's pretty clear that I think 79, the revolution in 79 that brought about the Islamic regime currently was that blowback. And the CIA is aware of that. And the fact that they would even try to get involved now, I think is pretty ridiculous knowing that history.
Blowback is just like a universal principle of like life. I mean, like you see it in so many different places. I mean, it's sort of like if you're trying to hold back like something that's building up pressure, like you can repress it, but eventually it's going to, you know, burst. Or you can, you know, like psychologically speaking, if you have some kind of trauma, you can repress it, you know, and kind of like try to push it down and beat it back in your psyche. But eventually down the road, it's going to, you know, manifest itself in some destructive way in your life. And, you know, whether it's physics, whether it's, you know, psychologically, or whether it's politically, it's like, you know, using force to, you know, sort of like impose your will upon something, you know, it's just kind of like basic physics in terms of like, you know, there's like an equal opposite reaction for any action that you take. And the more force you're exerting upon a group of people, the more that group of people is eventually going to push back. It doesn't mean that it's, you know, necessarily going to be equal because, you know, if you're America and you have this giant, you know, military industrial complex, you know, you're able to, I guess, kill more of them than they kill of you. But that's not exactly the foundation for what I would, you know, espouse as some sort of, you know, ethical government, let alone like the evangelical Christians who are, you know, most notorious for supporting this kind of thing historically. And it's just like, yeah, that's it I want to say it bewilders me, but at the same time it doesn't. I'm used to it. And I've almost become a little bit black-pilled. I'm trying not to be, but like the fact that right-wingers, but then especially Christians, just keep on not getting it and keep on just continue to fall hook, line, and sinker for all these different, you know, all the propaganda that's used to justify all these military actions or to turn a blind eye to it or bury their head in the sand. I mean, it's just, we keep on, ringing the alarms on all this stuff, but no one cares. I mean, people care about like Ukraine, but they don't care about Yemen. And it's like, and I'm not saying I don't care about the people dying in Ukraine, but why can't I also care about the people dying in Yemen? Why can't I care about the people who we've contributed to the deaths of in Iran over the past, 50, 60 years? It's like people just have this like selective outrage that's so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the selective outrage should be over the things that your government or in your country have helped cause.
Well, yeah, it's completely backwards. Like their selective outrage is towards what other people are doing, not what towards their own people are doing.
Well,
right. And this is also a Christian principle, right? Like remove the log from your own eye
exactly.
before taking the speck from your neighbors. So like, yeah, I'm sure the Iranian regime is no fun to live under. Neither is the Chinese government or the Cuban government or like any of these places. But they're all in opposition to us. None of the and a lot of the reasoning for the existence of some of these governments, like Liam was pointing to with Iran, or you could even say with Cuba, like a big reason the Cuban government became so communistic and anti-American was because of blowback against our policies years ago. And, like we never think about that. We never think about all the people who are starving in Yemen because of our support for the Saudi blockade that's going on. We don't think about the people who are dying in Palestine because of our support for Israel. We don't think about all the people who died in Iraq or Afghanistan. Like that's all nothing. And we're only focusing on like, oh my God, the Uyghurs or the Kurds or the hijabs, like that's all.
Reed, your problem is you don't care enough about like just imagine a daughter crying over the corpse of her parent or parents. You know what I mean? Like you obviously have no sympathy for something like that.
It does depend on who the subject material is. All of it.
But like we all intellectualize this, the idea of blowback, the idea that like all this stuff is kind of presented to us as a form of propaganda, like us libertarians that are like in this shit all the time. And it's easy to get black-pilled on this issue when your neighbors don't give a fuck about any of these. Like they give a fuck about the wars, but it's in the view of.
It's not even just that they don't give a fuck. It's like they don't give a fuck about that. And then they're still freaking like losing their fucking minds about like, immigration. Just like, God, like, I mean, I know, like, listen, I have no problem with people like Dave Smith and others who are like, not pro open borders. It's like, I don't care. But for people like the magatards who are still like, like they seem to be getting on better on some liberty issues, but they'll still like just randomly out of the blue, just like when they're complaining about the economy, instead of like focusing on like the actual causes, they'll just be like, and that's why we got to build the damn wall and send all these immigrants back. And I'm like, no, what the like, Jesus, like, God.
Well, I actually, at least when we're talking about foreign policy, I prefer people who don't give a fuck about any of it. Like, those are my people. If you literally don't give a fuck, that's fine. Like, I don't care if you don't care about kids in Yemen, as long as you also don't care about, women in Iran or whatever. Like, if you're flat across the board, don't give a fuck, and you don't want to get involved in anything, okay, that's cool. But the problem is there's very few people like that. Most people don't give a fuck about Yemen, but then they really do care about the Uyghurs in China, and they really do care about political dissidents in Cuba. And it's just like, if you actually won't give a fuck about everything, I'll be fine. But it's the selective giving a fuck about things that we have nothing to do with, other than perhaps like creating the problem in the first place, and just staying the fuck out of it.
Well, Christians are called to care about the world, but I guess somewhere along the way, there was a translation error, and being salt and light got translated to, be
bomb
Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah, I mean,
that outrage that represented is selective. Like that's the thing I was wanting to get at. It's like, and I know we all know this, but the public needs to know this, that they're being propagandized by our government, like subtly all the time. Anytime you turn on the cable television And them guys in them nice suits, they get up there and they wring our heartstrings over the Uyghurs or the Kurds, or insert whatever the newest guy that some big bag tyrant that America doesn't like is picking on. And that's how they really get us. I think that's the biggest form of propaganda our culture is forced with, is the idea that America has to save the world.
Yeah, I've been knocking doors for a lot of candidates here in Montana. And something that I've found is when I ask people what their top issues are, it's always whatever the media is talking about at the moment. And I was reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's kind of on psychology and economics. And there's this concept they call about he calls the availability heuristic. And the idea is that like you will put more importance towards things that are most readily available that you can recall in your mind. And this is like what we observe when Yemen is happening, when the US government invaded or helped the coup in Ukraine. They invaded Iraq. There was the war in Afghanistan, but then Russia invades Ukraine, and that's suddenly the biggest thing because the media is talking about it. Like all of these other things are happening and are equally
because
as
it was
important.
Completely unprovoked, Liam. Russia
Exactly.
just woke up one day and said, "Fuck it, let's march some troops into Ukraine."
And it's not just the availability heuristic. It's also just like how, you know, we have very short-term memories in the United States. And I tweeted this earlier, just United States of amnesia, because while I was learning about Iran, and I actually took a class about Iran last year at the University of Montana, and a lot of people view Iran as kind of like United States of amnesia, based off of that Gore Vidal quote. And part of that is because like the policy changes administration to administration. Prior to the 1953 coup, like the policy was containment, but then the Dulles brothers came in and they were advocating for the policy of rollback and liberating these countries. And that's kind of where the form of regime change came from, was the Dulles brothers, who I think are probably responsible for the Kennedy assassination. And I mean, what we've had in, Iran,
Stop it, Will.
Guatemala, Chile.
What?
Do you guys want to start a conversation on the Kennedy assassination?
No, not this.
But yeah, no, I mean, like truthfully though, like we do have amnesia in this country. Like 2014, no one even knows about the Ukrainian coup that happened. And yeah, I think that's kind of the lesson, is that a lot of people in the U.S. don't remember things that basically just happened in the administration prior to the current presidency.
But you know, democracy good. That's all I need to know. It's just democracy good, everything else bad. So it doesn't matter what we do. If we're fighting against some kind of country that's not democracy, then they're automatically the bad guys and we're automatically the good guys. And America was founded on a Christian nation, and the American flag is up in my church. So clearly, this is God's army that's sent to fight on Israel's behalf to make the world a safe place for Israel. Gosh, like it's right there in Revelations, guys.
To me, this country really went downhill when we took under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. That was the end of it. So.
Man, I miss you on Twitter.
Remember when that used to be an edgy Reed joke, like something like that? We've pushed the Overton window a ways in a year.
You found that edge.
Oh man!
And I don't know. I just increasingly don't give a shit. Like people get upset about the most petty, dumbass shit, and it's just like, fuck, I don't have time for that. Like I just don't. It's like there's actual evil going on in the world, and people get upset about dumb, mean tweets, or whether that's Trump saying mean tweets, whether that's Reed Coverdale saying mean tweets.
I don't have Twitter anymore, so
well, yeah. Certain state affiliate accounts saying mean tweets, or it's like people, again, people caring about these like tangential distraction culture war issues. I mean, whether it's like getting obsessed about. I mean, to some extent, I think. I mean, I don't know where you guys are at. I'm starting to get annoyed by the like anti-woke crowd, kind of like the right-wing reactionaries. And like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of shit in sort of like the woke SJW culture that I think is kind of part of the cathedral or the regime or whatever. And like, I don't like it, but it's like, you know, I don't know. I don't wake up in the morning and think that I'm not like solely animated by the fact that there are like people out there pushing some kind of trans agenda on people. Like, I think it's bad, but I mean, there's also people in the world who are like pushing all sorts of other crazy shit. And then like, it's like, what do we do about it? Right. It's like, if all you're going to do is talk about all these things that exist in the world and how you're offended by them, it's like, okay, but what are you going to do about it? Right. Like if you're going to invoke the state to fight that sort of battle, okay, well, good. I mean, I'm sorry. I have no reason to believe that is going to be successful. And I'm not saying I really care about people like DeSantis or others who are trying to like, you know, sort of like push back against some of that stuff, you know, on like the state level and whatnot. But it's like, is that really like the end game? Like, is that really going to be effective over the long term? And is that, I don't know, like, is that where we should be concentrating our energy right now? Because it's like, I don't know, like I care about, you know, the agenda to like trans the kids, but I kind of just, I don't know, I would rather have a conversation about like pushing back against trans and the kids when like we stop bombing a bunch of kids. And, you know, it's, I don't know, it's just some people I think they're more motivated by either hating the right or hating the left than they are by like just having a sort of like consistent ethic or consistent morality motivating their actions.
Yeah, so I think this became very transparent with the Meghan McCain tweet because you had people who claim to be, and I'm not even going to go after any libertarians here, but you have people who claim to want mean tweets and better policies and also claim to kind of be anti whatever the system is and really be agitators against the regime or whatever until something like that comes out. And then it's like, whoa, back right up. That's too much. So to me, like a lot of these right-wing reactionaries, they have zero substance. Like they're never taking on any actual systemic structural authoritarian problems, right? So they'll talk about how stupid it is that a man is on the women's swim team, which everyone with a double-digit IQ will agree, you know, and they'll be like, yep, that's pretty stupid. And then, you know, it should be like, okay, moving on, next thing. But
that's the appropriate response for a normal human to just be like, all right, that's weird. What else is going on in the world? Like,
yeah. So instead, what they do is they'll talk about that for months about how dumb it is, and they'll drag everyone into this stupid argument over whether or not men should be on the women's swim team. And any intelligent person, that was a no out of the gate, and then kind of moving on. But instead, it's like that becomes the focus, and then you never end up focusing on any of the big shit taking place. So Tim Pool will try to act like he is super countercultural and he's like really against the awful, terrible regime and he's really a renegade or whatever. But then he'll push all their talking points about the Uyghurs in China. And whenever someone really comes out against someone who's actually evil and pushes for lots of, you know, horrible policies, he's like, whoa, hands off. To me, that is like emblematic of most of the right wing. You know, they never talk about like the important stuff, and they never go after the structures that actually matter. And, you know, when some of them start like chipping away at the corners. So like Jesse Kelly, this was like a month ago now or so. He was really getting based on the FBI. He was saying like, we need to smash the FBI into a billion pieces and never put it back together. And we were retweeting him from LP New Hampshire and saying like, yes, Jesse, this is awesome. Like, keep going this way. And he was liking our stuff. And then he sort of cooled off and he was like, we need serious reform in the FBI. And it was like, dude, what? No, you were right before. Like we were saying, come on, Jesse, what happened? You were right before. And then Elon Musk made a tweet about how we need a kinder GOP that doesn't care what you do in your own private bedroom. And so then Jesse Kelly quote tweets that and says, we've had a kind GOP. It's time for a mean one. And so we replied to him, we hope by mean you mean going after the intelligence agencies that are, breaking down your doors in a Gestapo-like manner. And the only bedrooms we care about are the ones where Epstein's clients were raping underage girls and the FBI memory hold all of it. And, because that's like actually going after the structure that's ruining your life and everything. And he blocked us. And I don't know if he's gotten better on the FBI since then, or he's like come back to where he used to be. But this is what a lot of them do. Like if they get near something that's actually radioactive, they're not supposed to touch, they'll kind of back off. Oh, let's focus on what people are doing in their bedrooms instead. That's easy. That still gives us this kind of edgy, mean, countercultural look, but we're not really going after anything with teeth. And so our job is to be like, no, like the FBI, that is what's ruining this country. And that's what will break down your door and beat your face in if you're a political opposition or whatever. So to me, that is the right wing. They go after the fucking toothless, meaningless culture war bullshit that isn't going to actually really make a big difference. Just gives them this appearance of opposing the machine when they're not really.
Yeah, and then I mean, with the whole thing you said about Tim Pool, and I've had some strong disagreements with people in our own camp over that whole Meghan McCain thing, and I watched that whole episode with you on Jose going back and forth with Dave on that whole thing, which was kind of funny. I was like, first of all, like, Jose's a freaking agorist. I was like, an agorist invites the Libertarians on his show and they debate the Libertarian Party Twitter accounts for an hour.
The Libertarian Party in New Hampshire is turning Jose into a libertarian. Like,
it's pretty funny. But I can kind of get where Dave is coming from, but I think he's wrong in a sense on this, because he's like, well, we have to be the ones who are the most compassionate. And I'm like, well, yes, of course, I agree with that. But what do you mean by compassionate? If by compassionate you mean like the most respectful, or like, like saying the most like nice things, or not like offending people, like, I don't know. Like, I don't really give a shit about that. Like, it's this, I have the same thoughts about the Christians who get all bent out of shape about like me saying saying fuck or shit or faggot or whatever. It's like, who cares about mean words? The syllables and vowels coming out of my lips are not an indication of whether or not I love someone. You know what is an indication of how compassionate I am? How much I advocate for the annihilation of hundreds of thousands, or in some cases millions of people in different parts of the world, and to what extent I'm not just turning a blind eye to it, but actively promulgating propaganda to that effect. And so, like, when people were getting all about, like, oh, it wasn't compassionate to go after Meghan McCain and John McCain like that. It's like, no, fuck you. What's compassionate is being pissed off beyond belief about the millions of people that John McCain and Meghan McCain have helped to orchestrate the deaths of. And that is what compassion for human lives leads you to, is being pissed off about the genocides and the destruction of human life that's going on. And it's just like, oh, hold up, back off. You can't be pissed off about millions of people dying. Not like that, at least. Like, you gotta go about it nicely. It's like, no, dude, like, sorry, you know what? Jesus went into the temple pissed off and flipped some tables and chased people out with whips. And sometimes that is the right response.
I have heard people use the flipping tables to justify dropping nukes on Japan, but
right. No. We need to treat the people who bomb the shit out of brown people in the Middle East with a little bit of respect. You know what I mean? But it's okay to use the Bible in the name of slaughtering millions of people. Like, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be any less pissed off at those people, and I am not going to carry water for them because someone, held their feet to the fire in a public arena and did it in a way that hurt their feelings. Like, no, sorry, I don't give a fucking shit. I really don't.
Yeah.
I like Fired Up Jacob. Justified.
Yeah, we need to see more of this. I like
Fired Up Jacob. Hell yeah, brother.
I think he drank his whole glass.
Yeah.
I talked to Reed before this just on the phone about my position, and I think like I did agree with Dave more, but I think it just goes to my nature, and I think it was more that from a strategy perspective, if we wanted to get people to the point where we are making fun of John McCain and Meghan McCain crying over his casket, I think like where I did agree with Dave, it was like currently right now, if you were to ask someone like the average person what McCain did and like what his role was in Iraq, no one would know. They just revere whoever just because they're told to.
Right. But
so to me, it was like we should first get people to the point where they know where they. I just mean like by pointing out that he was responsible.
But what if? But here's the thing: people aren't hearing that because they're not paying attention. Right. We got to get people to pay attention and then come to them with the truth. So, like, I think what New Hampshire did was absolutely it was the same thing with the child labor tweets a year ago. Like, was it like? And back then, people were responding in a much better way. Like by people, I mean the Libertarians were actually responding and supporting that tweet in a way that it worked because it was like New Hampshire went out and like, you know, like threw the bomb and like ran away. And people were like, what the fuck? And everyone's paying attention. And then you had like all these people coming in and laying out all of the sound philosophical and empirical arguments for why abolishing child labor laws is actually good for the development of young people and for the economy. Meanwhile, in this instance, when the right response should have been the same, it should have been people going, okay, you might think this is in poor taste, but do you know about all of the shit that John McCain advocated for and all the propaganda he spewed and all the fucking evil that we committed in Iraq and Iran because of the actions of these neocons like John McCain? That's what we should have been doing. Instead, it was like, oh, hold up, guys. We can't be mean to neocons, or at least not that mean. It's like, now, and I get Dave's point was like, well, the first thing that people see is someone grieving over their parent. But the correct response to that is, hey, you know what? I am incredibly empathetic to children grieving over their dead parents. How about you be empathetic to children grieving over their dead parents and look at all of the fucking people that are dead in the Middle East who have their children, you know, look at all the pictures of children crying over the burnt, charred, blown up, you know, like body parts that used to be their parents. Like, no, I'm sorry. Like, just.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand, like, after the fact, like, after you made the tweet, like, don't back down. And you should absolutely make that point.
But I think you have to make the tweet to get people to pay attention, because you have to snap people out of that complacency. People just don't give a shit. I mean, libertarians have been preaching the truth about economics and preaching the truth about the horrors of war and military interventionism for decades. I mean, Scott Horton has been out there doing that kind of great work for decades. You know, even people like the Cato Institute, who I fucking hate, have been pointing out the horrors of war for decades. No one gives a shit, because they're not paying attention. We have to, it's kind of like the Matrix movie, right? Like, you have to do something to cause a glitch in the Matrix to get people to even get to the point where they're going to look at the red pill. But unless you do that, people are just going to keep on just breathing through life with absolutely no fucking care in the world.
I mean,
I just want to add, like, 99.9% of the tweets by Libertarian Party New Hampshire are policy, and they're like straight up, like, this is what and they're bold, you know, they're never like wishy-washy, but they're very, very, very few of them are actually really controversial and provocative. Most of them are like, you know, hey, look at this dead child in the Middle East. And so, like, the messaging of, like, in your face, like, look, this is what happened here, look, this is what happened here, it still gets almost zero traction. Like we've tweeted out so many pictures of dead children and starving children and shit, and it gets 400 or 500 likes or something, a couple retweets from the really anti-war people. No outsiders are
and then you bully Meghan McCain one time, and you're making national news for weeks.
International news.
I did tell Reed this. Like, honestly, the 6 million tweet and the Zelensky tweet, like those
that missed the mark. Yeah,
I actually support those more. Like, I thought that those were better tweets than the McCain one.
What was your is there any issue with the Meghan McCain tweet for you, Liam, other than just bad strategy?
Well, to me, it's like I told Reed this. Like, I have 3 different takes. I have like the Christian take, I have the strategic take, and then I have like the base take. The Christian take is like I have no idea.
It's all the same take.
Well, we could argue that, but like for the Christian take, like I really don't know, because I mean, like in Ezekiel, God says that He doesn't want evil people to die, but still He is willing to kill them. He'd rather them come to life. And then there are Psalms where it's clear that we are supposed to rejoice when justice
evil people perish.
When evil people perish.
Because your book is full of contradictions and everything.
Well,
Will, we're on your side. I'm on your side. Okay, that's friendly fire. Okay,
we don't want to lose him. He's on our side.
Don't trigger the
right
autism.
I really don't think they're contradictions as much as they are guideposts and like guideposts, because I think what it is it's more that like we're just not supposed to revel in it, but we are supposed to rejoice.
Yeah,
you're right. I've already down this thing. So, but yeah, no, I have that Christian take where I really don't know, and then the second take is the strategic one, and then the base take is like, yeah, hell yeah, like definitely send the tweet. And I didn't really speak on it because I didn't know what my position was. I didn't know which one to take. But after listening to Dave Smith, it really crystallized. I think, like Ron Paul, the reason like most of us are here is because Ron Paul just told us the truth. And I don't think that you have to shock people into doing that. Like the child labor law was literally just legalized child labor. And
no. It was children will learn more on a job site than they will in a classroom. Legalized child labor.
That is libertarianism, though. Like that's sure. I don't think that's offensive. Whereas like the photo of
what about the other one? John McCain's brain tumor saved more lives than Anthony Fauci.
Yeah, I mean that's like it's similar to me with the casket. Like it's to me it's like it doesn't. I don't relate to it as much like personally. And strategically, I don't think it really works, but I understand it, and I understand that it works for New Hampshire. And I also understand that New Hampshire is a completely different affiliate than Montana.
Yeah. So I want to take the names out of it because people start like, Dave said this or so and so, because like that kind of ruins the argument. Like who's saying what? Like I want people to just like think about, the merits of the argument just on its face, regardless of like which person takes that position or whatever.
Do you think anybody really looks at that picture of Meghan McCain, though, and thinks that the whole entire scenario there, not the funeral itself, but the picture that was released to the public of her crying over the flag draped coffin doesn't just exist to sell war? Like that's its only purpose.
I think it absolutely does. I mean, like part of the reason why I disagree or like just personally think that it doesn't work is because I came from the conservative background that the people who do revere John McCain just because they think they're supposed to. And I mean, it's clear that it was a manufactured photo, that it was set up, but like, if I were still that conservative, to reach me, you wouldn't want to post that photo and push me away. Cause I mean, the truth is no one's going to pay attention more than that first headline that they post where it's like, yeah, New Hampshire posted a photo and made fun of John McCain, or Meghan McCain crying over John McCain's casket. Like, I don't think people have, right? What we were talking about earlier is that citizens don't have long-term attention spans. And
but think about it this way, Liam. Like, so we went from 23,000 followers to 22,000 ish to 28,500 followers. So those people who did see that one tweet, because it was mostly from that tweet, now they see everything we say all the time. And we had we had a publishing company from Australia just message us the other day asking us to answer questions about the war in Ukraine and like why we feel the way we do. And we've had dozens and dozens of articles released about us. And if you read the articles, most of them say like, they say that they posted this because they hate John McCain for his war crimes, and they double down on, you know, like it's pretty decent press that really, you know, kind of flushes out our position in a, you know, kind of condensed form. But it obviously works for some people, right? Like it worked for a large number of people. This is what I think everyone's missing about this thing is, and I think this is a problem with the Mises Caucus that I saw kind of early on, that we have a centralized problem. Like we have this idea that we all need to say the same stuff and have the same style.
Okay, I disagree with you on that.
Hold on. Let me finish my thought. We have this idea that we all need to be Ron Paul again, which I think is dumb. I mean, I think Larry Sharp reaches a lot of people in his own way. I think Spike Cohen reaches a lot of people in his own way. I think Dave reaches a lot of people. I think Ryan Dawson reaches a lot of people. I think all these people have completely different methods that work for completely different people. You know, I mean, some people were brought in by Joe Jorgensen or like Gary Johnson or people that we typically think of as kind of loose noodles. So when it comes to having a messenger who represents the party on the presidential ticket, and when it comes to the national party making tweets, I do think, yeah, like this type of thing wouldn't be that productive. Like, I don't think if the national party had tweeted this out, that would have been a great move. And if we have a presidential candidate who, like, I don't know. I mean, I do think the presidential candidate should be kind of edgy. I think, you know, Trump's policies were awful, but he really taught us a lot about how to weaponize the media when they hate you, because they are going to hate us if we're not running an approval seeking campaign. If we're running a contrarian campaign against what the media wants us to be saying, the only way you're going to generate media about yourself is by saying like crazy shit. And it can be true and crazy. Like you don't want to lie. Like you don't want to say stuff that's completely fucking false or something that has nothing to do with what you're trying to sell. But there's a line of like edgy to informative. And, you know, if you're more on the edgy side, it's going to get more press. If you're more on the informative side, you're going to get across what you want to say more. And it's a sliding scale of like figuring out where is the most effective at a given time. And I think New Hampshire, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, really speaks to a lot of people. Obviously, now we're only like 50 followers behind Texas, which is the largest affiliate right now. We're right behind them. We did have 4,000 followers last year when, you know, the party was restructured or whatever. So there's obviously a market for it. It's obviously attracting a lot of people. We've gotten a lot of people to move. We actually got people to move to New Hampshire over the McCain tweet. A bunch of people like saw that and they're like, okay, this is enough. Like I'm interested. What's going on here? We got members to sign up for LPNH over the tweet. You know, so I think there's a place for it. Like, I really hate this idea of like, we all need to message this exact way, and any deviation from this idea of messaging is a failure. I think we need everybody on board. And yes, like when you run a presidential candidate and you have a national party affiliate, you do have to centralize things a little bit and decide, okay, we're going to say like the broad libertarian principles here, and we're going to try to say something that encapsulates what most of us feel. But like when it comes to New Hampshire, I don't think it should have to be the same as the national party. And I think, you know, if Maryland is different and Florida is different, and they all are, like, I mean, we're known as like the super based one, and then Kentucky's the sort of based one, and then Texas is the super gay one, and it's just like whatever. Like, I mean, they're all, you know, they're all doing their thing, and I don't know. Like, I think that's the way it should be.
I don't know. I agree with everything you said, except the one line I disagree with you on is the idea that there's people saying we all need to have the same message, because I don't think that's what people are saying. I think people, for the most part, want there to be a diversity of strategy and voices within the party, within the caucus, within the movement. But I just think that some people are like, they think New Hampshire just goes too far sometimes, and thinks that New Hampshire needs to tone it down just a little bit on some of the times that in their mind that they go too far. But I don't think everyone wants New Hampshire to become Texas or New Hampshire just to become a mirror of national.
There's also a sliding scale on what you're talking about. There are some people.
I mean, I guess yeah.
I'm not saying everybody. Like, I mean,
but I think like prominent people in the caucus and in the leadership, I don't think that they want everyone to just be, Ron Paul or Dave Smith 2.0 and just like, repeat the same talking points. There might be some people who, I mean, just because like if you put forth any proposition and ask, are there people in a group that believe this? Yes, I'm sure there are, but I don't think it's a substantial number of
there
people.
have been many times when someone is trying something new that the response, this is not the Ron Paul revolution, has been made like a number of times. And most of the times it's been where I'm like, I actually think this is like what this guy should be doing, because this is going to be effective in 2022, where Ron Paul was effective in 2012 to the largest extent.
But you need both. Like you need someone, and everyone has a different temperament and a different skill set, right? Like sure. I would be a bad Ron Paul. I'm not that calm. I'm not that patient. I'm not a baby doctor in a town of like a few hundred people. Like, what I mean? Like I couldn't do it. I get way too animated, way too pissed off. And, but you need people, you need your.
Could I say something too? Like,
yeah,
our guy that we're putting forth, Dave, he's the guy that we all support. Basically we got a long run until like we select our candidate, but like Dave Smith as a candidate, like I'm on board here for like bold Legion of Skanks comedian Dave Smith that's willing to push the envelope in edgy comedy too, in messaging. I'm really uninterested in Christian conservative Dave that wants to talk about immigration and trans shit with Tim Pool. I don't know. Like when I got invested in this, I was really thinking we were going to be kind of wild and shit. And now like making fun of fucking fat Meghan McCain is too much. Like he's trying to emulate Ron Paul, which is a good thing to emulate. And that might be a good strategy for most people that aren't.
He needs to integrate the best of Ron Paul, but still be himself. Like Dave should not be Ron Paul. And I don't think that Dave needs to be New Hampshire. I think Dave can be Dave. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. To me, New Hampshire is like, they're almost like the sacrificial lamb. Like they go so fucking like balls hard to the wall that like they're going to get annihilated by like all of the corporate press, by all like the big talking names and whatnot. But that's good. Like they set. Here's how
we're figuring what you can get away with, and so you can follow.
And you guys push the Overton window so far out into left field that it's kind of like, it's almost like and now we talked about this a few times and you've talked about this on some of your shows too recently, that like now the legalized child labor tweet is like tame. Like today it would almost be like, make children working in coal mines great again. You know what I mean?
Like, we'd have to do something like that.
You'd have to do something like that. And people would go, whoa, what the fuck? That's insane. And then like we come in and go, oh yeah, no, we don't want children working in coal mines. We just think that children should be able to, do apprenticeships and drop out of high school and enter the marketplace
Make
early.
You guys look like the reasonable moderates.
Exactly. It's like you guys go so far out into left field that then radical positions that just like take the insane edge off that New Hampshire brings to the table look completely reasonable to people in comparison. And it's like, I like that kind of good cop, bad cop sort of strategy. I think that's actually very effective. And I think, again, as far as what you said about Dave, Will, I mean, I'm obviously biased. I like Christian conservative Dave, but I don't think being Christian conservative means not being Legion of Skanks comedian Dave. Like, and I agree with Dave in the idea that like, he wouldn't go on like the Joe Rogan podcast, or he wouldn't go on like Fox Business, or go on the campaign trail doing campaign stuff and do Legion of Skanks stuff, because it's not the time and place. but you got to incorporate an element of like what makes you successful. And so, you know, he can't just water it down to nothing and just go like, you know, full blown, just all I'm going to talk about is end the Fed in Yemen. Like you gotta have that comedian trolling the regime element in there, even if you tone it down a few steps from what New Hampshire does.
And he's got to be willing to like give a little like, and he does in like some of our pure libertarian arguments. But I find like Dave's like scared to talk shit about, you know, blue collar conservatives or rednecks. Like he's treating us like liberals treat black people. Like he doesn't want to hurt our feelings. He does.
I don't know. There was an episode the other day where he definitely kind of, you know, was a lot harsher towards right wingers in general than he has been, because like, you know, and made clear his issues with Trump and made clear his issues with like, I think it's just sort of like when people are in power, you tend to attack them more. And like the Democrats are in power now. So that's kind of the focus. But that doesn't mean that Dave's ignoring that some of the shortcomings of right-wing conservatism. But I don't know, like it's a tough balance to make, because as much as I'm triggered by some of the, you know, right-wing conservatism, they're still a lot closer to us. And like your average, like, again, it pains me to say it, and people like, listen, I've never been a registered Republican in my life.
I'm a registered Republican right now, by the way. I'm just pointing that out.
Listen, I voted for Hillary Clinton. That's how fucking Democrat I was. So when people go off, like, people act like I'm some kind of like alt-right Christian nationalist dominionist, like, you know, bigot. I'm just based. Like, yeah, you're right. But
so
like,
I want to talk about this, because we are always talking about like what has worked for libertarians in the past, and the answer is nothing. Nothing has worked for libertarians in the past. We should be looking at the Democrats and Republicans. How do they win? Like, Donald Trump beat the Bushes and the Clintons in his first run for any office, and it was for president. And, you know, like this idea, I mean, Trump, like I said earlier, he's horrible on policy, but he was a genius when it came to media coverage, an absolute fucking genius. And I think like to ignore that or to not like try to emulate that is a huge mistake. So some people aren't going to want to do that. And I totally understand that. This is my thing, is like, I'm not asking for everyone to agree with like how Jeremy Kauffman's running his campaign. Like, I don't think Larry Sharpe should suddenly start saying crazy shit to try to, you know, get into the news in New York or whatever. Like that's just so un-Larry, and no one would buy it. It's just so fake or whatever.
No,
I'm just saying, like, if people are going to do that because they're good at it and it's working, and they're ending up like, if Israel is writing about you and criticizing you for wanting to defund Saudi Arabia, like you've kind of done something right, I would say. So like, it's not everyone has to have this same strategy. It's just like, well, if this strategy is working for one of the parties, maybe maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. That's all I'm saying.
I did want to clarify, like, I'm not arguing against the strategy or even that like different affiliates can't have different strategies. It was just that one tweet that I had a problem with. And it's not even like, I wasn't offended by it or anything. It's just that I do think like messages like that do turn off the people we want to wake up, especially conservatives coming from that background.
This was something I was going to say before, like, and this might go to like, I don't know what your opinion or viewpoint on this is, Liam, but like, I don't think we're going to reach everybody, and I'm okay with that. Like, we need to go for the people that we can reach. We're never going to be 50% of the population. We're probably not even going to be 30% of the population. We probably are going to be on the high end between 10 and 20%. And I'm okay with that, because that 10 to 20% can still like effectively coalition to get a lot of what we want done at the state and local level. But we're not going to wake those people up. Or if we do wake those people up, it's going to take longer to wake those people up if we, you know, like if we play conservatively. It's like, you know, it's like people want the Libertarian Party to be acting like a team like a football team that's up 40 points in the fourth quarter. Like, oh, just run some ISO plays, do a little draw play, do a little screen play. Like, no, we need to be freaking throwing the ball down the field. And yeah, sometimes there's going to be whiffs and misses. And I think, you know, the one push, and I've talked to Reed about this privately, is like, you know, I think we don't all need to be saying the same things, but I do think that New Hampshire needs to be willing to be good team players and to admit their misses when they make their misses. They've done that sometimes, and sometimes they haven't. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, historically speaking. You know, they did take down the what was it, the $6 million minimum wage tweet, which, listen, fucking hilarious. Just, you know, didn't think it was a good idea to put it on a national affiliate account. But there's been tweets in the past where the New Hampshire.
By the way, that fucking was circulating on Twitter again today. Not the 6 million tweet, but the 10,000 or your blah blah blah. You know,
yeah, I saw that. It was on Facebook too.
So it's like, I don't know. Just saying, like
it was all time.
We actually made a comment on Nina Turner's post saying, last time we tried this, we got in trouble, so we just stayed away from it. Although we did say like $0 minimum wage, or you hate poor people.
The problem is you were too low last time. You were way too low. You should have been. You should have been something like, you know, 10 million just to be safe.
That's true. I mean, or 599,900 or 500. Yeah, 5,999,999. Then we would have been all right. But
so this is kind of the distinction that I wanted to make earlier. Like the reason why I say that I have like a personal take and then the strategic take and then the base take is like, I really don't know. I think just when I hear bold messaging, what I care about is like people like Dave Smith going on Joe Rogan's podcast and saying that like the United States is currently, you know, causing children to die just because they're destroying their waterway. They literally don't have access to clean water. That's bold to me. Whereas like, yeah, I just don't think photos, like personally, I don't think photos of Meghan McCain crying over John McCain's casket is bold in the same way. Like, I think there's like an edgy bold, and then there's just bold and clean cut, get straight to the point messaging that I think really is effective, because it's like you're not giving them any point that they can get distracted on. It's like when Benghazi happened, like, or when the EU the EU phone call happened, people cared more about the fact that the diplomat said the F word than they did that like we actually took over the coup and or that we were involved in the coup. And like if you give people ammunition by not being clean cut like that, I think that you actually end up weakening your argument. And that's just where I'm coming from, is like, instead, if you did, as Spike Cohen said, like put both images of like a kid dead.
Okay, so I will agree with you there. I think the better version of the McCain tweet is to juxtapose those two images together. I will give you that. I think that would have.
I disagree. I still disagree.
You can't say happy holidays, like
so look, like there are different ways to do it, and would have had like different levels of impact. The way we did it was the maximum reaction. So like, yeah, like maybe it would have hit better with
I still
some
think
other
you would have had
people.
like 95% the same reaction. Like maybe, I mean, I don't know. I think people would have been just as offended.
I don't think
to be fair, like
quote tweeted it 6 times. I've had pictures of her father's war crimes along with it.
And to be fair, like this is all speculation, and we're talking about like different,
sure,
you know, if we would have done different things, like I don't know what would have been more effective. I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about what we believe, I think it makes our argument better if we just get to the point. Because the truth is like, if you didn't go trending that day because you didn't send out that tweet, like another tweet like the child labor law would have, law tweet would have.
Let's consider this. A lot of us love Ron Paul for the Giuliani moment and the whole like. I love the passing around the collection basket. It's a funny comment. But no, we all love the Giuliani movement because like Ron Paul was like, you know, calling out the neocons for blowback on a big stage and saying like, no, like it was our foreign policy decisions over the last, you know, like the 30 years before 9/11, you know, that led to that. But people were saying that before Ron Paul. Like Harry Brown wrote a freaking like little book or article, like literally like almost like the day after 9/11, basically saying, "Hey, this was fucking blowback for all of the foreign policy moves that we've made over the past 30, 40 years." And other people were calling that out too. So like people were saying really bold things about topics where people, we're very, we're paying attention to and we're very passionate about, but it just, I don't know, like it wasn't enough. I don't think that, I think, when it's kind of what Reed said earlier, like what has worked for libertarianism in the past? Nothing. Because like nothing's really worked. The closest that's come to working is like Ron Paul really growing the movement and accelerating, the spreading of the message. But Ron did that by, he wasn't like balls to the wall offensive, but he was on just like on a really big stage and he was unwilling to kiss the ring of power. So it was very effective, but he had to do something to grab that attention. You know what I mean? So like,
I think this might be heresy, but I think Trump was much more effective than Ron Paul. Like, obviously, Ron Paul had the right answers and the right message, but you can't argue that Ron Paul was as influential as Donald Trump, right? It's inarguable.
Well, I don't know about that only because like we didn't.
Towards what though?
I'm not sure about that only because we didn't we're living in completely different times. Like I really don't know because if we would have had the technological moment that we did when Ron Paul was there, like we had no idea how far that would have spread. Because I mean, the truth is we're all here.
I don't think so. So I do not think. I think Joe Biden won the election in 2020. And the reason I think that is because I don't think you have to logically convince people of anything anymore. I don't think any of it's logical. It's mostly emotional. That's why people voted for Trump. So you think of like the huge movements.
But also why people voted against Trump.
Right. Yeah, it's completely emotional.
I voted for Hillary Clinton, even though I had spent like a year and a half bashing her endlessly as a Bernie Sanders supporter. And listen, the Bernie Sanders people, they understood the skeletons in Hillary's closet. But it's just they emotionally hated Trump so much that like literally overnight, Bernie Sanders supporters just like went from, kind of in a very based way back in 2015, calling out the Clintons for the evil that they were, to suddenly being like, oh no, Trump's awful, so now we have to, I'm with her, and all this stupid shit. Like people are entirely like their ideology is way more about like their emotional experience and like who their friends are and who their acquaintances are and the way their family is voting and the way maybe even the way their religious community is voting.
Yeah, so to be clear, like I think the exposition, what you're talking about, like Dave going on Joe Rogan, like I completely agree with all that. And I think that's really effective for some people and probably for the most important people who are going to actually stick around and actually care about stuff. Like you absolutely need that exposition saying what the truth is. Totally, like 100%. But I think to create like a huge successful movement that's going to have like a lot of lasting impact, bigger than the Ron Paul movement, you have to look at like how those people that have made those big movements have made it. Like the Bernie Sanders movement it dwarfed the Ron Paul movement in comparison, but Bernie Sanders' ideas don't make more sense than Ron Paul's. They're just he was more connecting on an emotional level, just pushing out Medicare for all. Like Medicare for all doesn't make any sense. It's like it's an awful idea. Or build the wall. Like that's also doesn't make any sense if you actually like break it down by numbers. How illegal immigrants get here mostly, overstaying their visas or whatever. Like it doesn't logically make sense, but it doesn't matter because you've resonated with a crowd and you've built a movement off of like gaining all this attention for saying something that's just like, whoa, what are you talking about? So I think if we're going to have a really successful movement, we can't bank on it being made out of logic, like, or at least not being sparked off of logic, because nobody cares. If people were logical, we wouldn't have the current president we do, and we wouldn't have had Donald Trump. We would have had Ron Paul. We would have had Harry Brown. Like it's not that people haven't heard the right stuff. Like a lot of them haven't, but when they do, they don't. They don't actually change the way they live. Some of them do, but it's a very, very, very small minority of people who actually adjust, their lifestyle after they hear something that's true. It's like 5% of people probably. So, I don't know. I think we should take a page out of the Democrats and Republicans' books. They and here's the other thing. Like they also, like when it comes to coexisting, they're way better at it than we are. Like they hate each other and they like have all sorts of disagreements. Like if you look from like Liz Cheney to DeSantis to Donald Trump to Rand Paul to Matt Gaetz, like they're very, very different, but they still are able to function because they just like kind of go for their they go for their groups that they're trying to reach or whatever, and they get along. Like the problem with libertarians, which is a good thing, like the Democrats and Republicans, they sacrifice all of their principles in order to win, right? Like they all like throw down at the end and say, whatever, like I completely disagree with you on everything, but you're team red, so I'm going to support you. That's why they win. We don't win because like we're so principled that we're like, no, you aren't like a real libertarian because you disagree on voluntary cannibalism or whatever. So like I think to an extent we have to look at what they do and be like, you know what? Okay, I do disagree with this guy on this thing, and I wish he would say this more. But at the end of the day, whatever, like he is saying stuff that's way better than what these other people are saying, and then like not trying to have this mono this like group that's just trying to reach one demographic or something. Like I was saying earlier, we need to be really decentralized in our approach and trying to reach all sorts of different people and then coming together under a banner when we run a presidential candidate.
No, I mean, we're kind of trying to get the remnant. It's sort of where I'm at. And, it's funny, Reed used the number 5% of the population actually responds to like information. 5% of like 330 million people is about 16 million people, which is, back to what I said earlier, we can probably max out between 10 and 20 million people if we really push hard. It's like that's what I see.
People are like, would y'all say are in the liberty movement or the Libertarian Party right now? Does anybody got the numbers on that?
I don't know. We might be, if I don't have the numbers. If I had to guess, we're probably somewhere around at most, if you're talking about like the entirety liberty movement,
1% of the country, maybe, if we're lucky,
which would be like
small.
what, like 3 million, maybe.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah. So by the way, I think I started that with, I think the exposition is important because I agree. Like the remnant is the most important demographic to reach. But if we are going to run campaigns, I think like taking a page out of the Democrats and Republicans book is how they like are successful and get lots of media. Like we should be thinking about how they do that.
No, I think we can get a lot of libertarian policies passed through issue coalitions and through political action at the local level that doesn't require making a lot of people libertarian. Heck, I even I know he's not always someone that you have the most agreement with, Reed, and especially not you, Will, but even guys like Andrew, Popular Liberty with the GOP Mrs. Caucus, I think that some of the ideas he has in terms of things to do at the local level to sort of like not make people libertarian, but incentivize local government to create more.
Like have our local governments invest in the stock market. I'm sorry, I'll stop.
I knew I would trigger Will that way. It's revenge for saying the Bible contradicts. But no, I'm on my point just being like I'm kind of white-pilled on our ability to actually fight back against authoritarianism and to push decentralization and push libertarian policies at the local level, because I don't think we need to make people libertarian in order to do that. Now, I do think that making more people libertarians is obviously going to help in terms of, in sort of a defensive manner, and also in terms of just like being able to attack more localities. Like it's a good idea to grow the movement to whatever our peak is, whether that's 10 million or 20 million or 5,999,999. I don't know how many it is, but I hope we can peak out at what we can peak out at. And then,
by the way, that would be an incredible number if that's like how many vote for the Libertarian Party in 2024. Right on the nose.
Yeah, it seems a bit high.
Hey, could I put us in a direction here? You mentioned like focusing on localization and everything. And I've been kind of like pondering something. A lot of the like trepidations people have about like fully embracing the localization thing is I think some people are scared to give up some of the like liberal accomplishments that have came forward throughout, like, the federal government, like say gay marriage, certain things like that. Should we be focusing on maybe like pushing our state governments to like codify gay marriage and things like that, to like just kind of show support for like the idea that localization works? Because like, for real, like me, like I'm in this shit.
Have you ever met a gay person, Will? No.
But for real, like there's a lot of gay libertarians, but when they hear us Mises dorks talk about like how we want to support, like go back to local governments or state governments and that kind of thing, they're scared to get, like, some of them are married to people. And if like we, one day we wake up and Georgia doesn't have gay marriage anymore, these people's lives are ruined and shit. And like we, as the proponents of localization, like we should be pushing this kind of stuff to just, at least if we ever get our accomplishments, we're not fucking over people.
I mean,
hold on. I just got to interject here because this comment is triggering me. Tucker, Trump, and Crowder are not neocons. They literally attack the neocons every day. So Tucker's the best out of the three of those, but you can still be a neocon and hate other neocons. I mean, a lot of the neocons have just shifted their focus. So a lot of them don't care about Iraq or Syria anymore, but now they just care about Iran and China. All three of those guys are horrible on Iran, or actually China is okay on Iran, but the other two
like
certainly
you can
are.
be a
in
black
China,
person and hate. It's like you can be a black person and still hate other black people. Look at Obama.
Yeah. So just because they all hate Liz Cheney, it doesn't mean they hate neoconservatism. And they all are, I would say Tucker more hates Liz Cheney for the right reasons, but certainly Trump hates Liz Cheney, and I would say Crowder just because she doesn't like Trump.
And wouldn't they be like the new conservatives? Like, isn't the root word of that just kind of like the new brand of conservatism? Like,
well, the neocons originally were like Trotskyites who then rebranded themselves as liberals and then conservatives, and then they sort of gone back to like liberal interventionists. The whole thing about neoconservatives is that they're shapeshifters. They're very good at like going from one cultural thing to another. And so you have neocons like Mike Pompeo, who just stayed in the Republican Party. And then you got other ones like Robert Kagan and Bill Kristol, who like leave and become Democrats because it's that's where their lizard suit like fit better or whatever. So this whole idea that neocons are like a fucking stable force that always think a certain way and are always like with one group of cultural people is bullshit. Like they're definitionally not that. They're people who, change their outward appearance to further the same policy goals with different demographics as time goes on. So anyway, sorry to cut you off about gay marriage, but
no, I'll talk shit on neoconservatives any time.
This is more, it's more unifying
than y'all's like thoughts on that, or like
my only pushback to what you said was that, like, first of all, I think it's a little bit melodramatic to say that, like, if gay marriage suddenly was not allowed in Georgia, that like their lives are ruined. I mean, compared to like
marriage was null,
there's still conversion therapy. Will, come on,
exactly, yeah, God. No, but like, what do you mean by ruined? Like, I mean, unless you're telling me,
okay, that's a little dramatic, but say inconvenienced at the best. Like, say there's a
your inconvenience is not my problem. Like, I just, it's not. Like, I don't believe in this idea of equality in terms of like, you know, me and my wife can get married, so you and your husband have to also be able to get married. I mean, first of all, I don't want the government involved in marriage at all.
No,
I think, but on that point, I think that's exactly why like the emphasis at the state level would have to be on like contract law and tax law, and it would be like just making equality in the sense of contract. Like we don't want the state to discriminate against people as for like contract enforcement.
That's what I was going to say.
I think that's
like,
what it boiled down to.
If the state is going to give out marriage licenses, and that's how you can.
I know we've been down that. We debated this on my podcast, I think.
We did. If the state is going to control marriage, then they shouldn't be allowed to discriminate, I think. I mean, if we actually get them out of marriage, then it's the null and void topic. But as long as they're controlling marriage,
I think the idea would just be to like nullify whatever you can at the federal level that is involved with marriage, and then also get the state out of it. I mean,
there's only two things I commonly hear as arguments for why gay people not being able to get married is a major obstruction to their ability to live life the way they want. One would be like tax reasons, but I think that's not really a big deal because honestly, if you're married and you don't have kids, you're probably paying higher taxes if you're filing jointly than if you file separately. So that doesn't even seem to be like a really compelling argument unless they're going to adopt a bunch of kids.
Rights. Like seeing, rights to see your spouse in the hospital.
Right. So that's the right to see their spouse in the hospital. I don't even know if that's a law. I don't think that's something that needs solved at the legal level. Like that's something that like hospitals set the standard for. So if it's like you have a significant other, the hospital can have their policy. Like there's no law that says if you're not married, you can't go visit this person in the hospital. It's a hospital policy. So they can decide who's allowed to visit people. And if you want to push the hospitals to be like, hey, like if someone has a significant other and they're not married, whether they're in a straight relationship or a gay relationship, they should be allowed to visit their significant other in the hospital. Like, you don't need the government to solve that. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying like you need the government. Like we're all anarchists at heart or whatever, or minarchists, and we all have this like. I'm starting to get like almost I can't go through this again, but like the idea, we all want marriage not associated with the state, but like it's gonna be like
just say it will. Just say it. Stop living in Ancapistan in your head. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah. But like, we're the proponents of the localization. Like we're coming, like we're talking strategy and how we talk to like people that are not libertarians. And when we're out here talking to people like, we want to abolish the federal government and have states or local governments run, the aspects of our lives that the state it deems it have to. Marriage is one of them, and contract laws like that. And we, as much as you hate throwing a bone to the gays, Jacob, like we got to stand up for their right to marry. If
you don't have a right to marry, though, that's my hope.
I get you, but quit living in Ancapistan in your head.
That's not even Ancapistan in my head. It's just like that'd be like. Someone coming to me and saying like you have a right to like buy a car or I don't know.
What do you call it? Like your ability to marry someone. Like what would you say?
Well, yeah, to the extent that like not allowing gay marriage would be prohibiting certain types of private contracts. I think that we have to be opposed to that no matter what. But like fundamentally,
not only opposed to that, like
but here's the thing: there's so much propaganda around this. Like there are very few instances where states were actually banning private contracts that basically gave gay couples close to the same sort of privileges that marriage contracts gave.
Close to the same, but not the same. Like it's just.
In very few instances were any of the distinctions really would they measure up to a difference?
Those are people that's
yeah, but you're asking me to like die, like to get animated to like go fight on that battle, and I'm like, that's just such a low. Hey, like it's not a. It's such a low hanging fruit. Like it's not. It's like driver's licenses. It's like I'm not going to go fucking die on the hill of driver's licenses right now. I'm not going to die on the hill of privatizing the sidewalk.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, I think what Will's saying is like if gay people were not allowed to get driver's licenses, and then you were just saying, well, we shouldn't have driver's licenses at all.
Good. I hate the fucking rules.
Okay, but his point would be like, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but we're not there. So while the state is controlling who's allowed to drive or whatever, then you shouldn't be able to discriminate against people who want to drive based on, what their sexuality is. So you don't have a right to drive, right? I guess. But if the state is requiring you to get a license and then they exclude you from being able to get a license because of something unrelated to your ability to drive a car, that's not okay, right? Like while we live under that system, you shouldn't be. Well, how's it different?
Well, one is a system that's based upon like a licensing system. One's a licensing system that like the state claims that they have to control to make sure people are competent in their ability to drive so they don't pose a risk to the lives of other people.
Right. Like, but it has nothing to do with your competence is my point. It has only to do with...
Right. No. So if they're discriminating against people not based upon their ability to demonstrate competency, that's a problem. But like...
That's what I'm saying. So like,
okay, but marriage is a completely different thing. Like marriage is like, there's nothing, it's just a piece of paper that says like, I'm joined to this person in a, like, we're now supposed to be construed as like in a union in the eyes of the state, even though like marriage is more of a religious term that was supposed to mean a union in the eyes of God. And like, I just don't see the parallel there because again, I don't see where,
regardless of the differences between a driver's license and a marriage license, it's the point that the state is denying you a license to be able to do something that has nothing to do.
Yeah, but one has. Can we not recognize that one significantly hampers a person's ability to go and do things in life, and the other really, like, it might in some small niche ways, but not in ways that like aren't easily overcomable. Like if the state's telling you can't have a driver's license, I can recognize that like it's not that you're unable to find a way around that, but like that's a major hampering on your ability to go do things that you would be able to freely do otherwise if the state wasn't restricting you. Whereas like you're not able to go like buy and drive a car on like public roads, which are like 99.9% of all the roads that exist. So in the way like the state is sort of like bottlenecking your ability to travel in a significant fashion. Whereas restricting who can get married, I just don't see, again, what significant damages are being done to people other than like they just don't get to claim the title of marriage. And I'm sorry, like that's just not enough for me to get like up in arms and angry about to the point where I would go and like devote tons of time to fighting it. I mean, Kate Nicole in the comments made a good point too, which is like insurance. Like there are so many private market options to people in those situations, even now, to find ways around that. Fine.
That's a point for you there. Like just saying, like it's not. There are ways people can get around this, but.
And people were for like decades. People were living together in gay relationships, and like at most they had some minor inconveniences to their life, but for the most part, they were able to live their lives in more or less the same ways that everyone else around them was.
That's fine.
Minus being able to say the sentence "we're married," and minus being able to file their taxes as married people. Like it's not. And then now the adoption thing's different. Like gay people just have a hard time adopting, period, whether they're married or not.
Even just like adopting, but say like one partner has a child and like they want their new partner to like, like they want to sit there and like create a union to where like this person is going to be able to take care of that child if something happens to them or something. And I get you. There's ways around that in contracts and everything like that. But let's just back away from even just like it's not the end of the world or ruining their lives, but like there are a lot of gay people right now that look at the federal government as something that is making their lives better because it is upholding that. And when we sit here and come and be like, no, fuck all that, we're going to leave it to Georgia and Alabama, they go, yeah, fuck you, I'll just be a shit lib. And like, I don't blame them.
What? I think that's with all due respect, Will, I love you, but I think that's kind of homophobic. Like, you're sort of like saying like gay people are this like special class of people that have to be pandered to, and if we don't pander to them, they're going to be completely turned off to the message of liberty. Whereas I know tons of gay people who would actually take my position here because they're actually not that entirely, their political thoughts and their identity is not just entirely wrapped up in their identity of where they want to stick their genitalia.
Okay,
like,
we
I
can
think
even like get it off of like just gays. Like we could talk about other things that the federal government enshrines that local governments don't. Like, you know, issues in the Bill of Rights. Like, say, maybe libertarians in New York that are pushing localization, they need to be focused on like making sure New York enshrines gun rights and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a good point here. Yeah, so we got into this on my podcast too when I had Reed and Will on a couple of months ago, and I guess it's like I think where we ended up on that was I said, I mean, use every weapon available if it's increasing the liberty of people. So even though like I don't believe in the Constitution, and I think in a like pure libertarian sense, I would support the right of like New York having the right to like pass laws against gun ownership, and not have the federal government override their will. On the same token, though, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to grant a concession there. I guess I'll grant a concession when it comes to like something that's, you know, I think that's a major impact, right? Like if people are in an entire state are told that they can't purchase firearms to protect themselves, which is, you know, not just a hazard to their ability to defend themselves just in a regular fashion. It's a hazard to their ability to, you know, protect themselves from the government, because now the government has a monopoly in that state over the legal possession of firearms. So to me, that's enough of a consequence that I would agree with you there.
Well, what about like freedom of speech? How about that? Like that's just somebody's ability to talk shit on the government, or like in Georgia's case, Israel. Like there are laws in Georgia's books that, you know, fucks with people in their contracts dealing with the state that they can't.
Yeah, I don't want any laws on the books from the state restricting.
I know you don't, but I'm saying like us. My whole point of bringing up the gay marriage and my homo.
Oh, so like what would I do if
Jacob turned that around on me? He's like, you support gay marriage, so you're homo. But like all these
pretty good workaround.
It was good. That was a good one, bro. But like all these issues, like we're the champions of localization, or y'all are. I'm the skeptic that just hangs out with y'all. But like we should be pushing I think all of this shit across the board, like our local governments. I'm uninterested in like living under the tyranny of Georgia and our back ass words bullshit. Like where the federal
I think I agree with you, Will. Like I mean, I think it is kind of naive to think that like the state government is going to dissolve itself or whatever. And even though I think the state government,
but who banned?
Well, hold on.
Was it the federal government or New Hampshire?
Yeah, let me finish my thought. I think that the state can become almost or basically equally as oppressive as the federal government, not on a worldwide scale, but on a personal scale. Like to you, your state government can become just as bad. So I think, yeah, let's put it this way. I moved to New Hampshire because New Hampshire has the cultural values that I agree with, and they also are fine with like getting rid of the government. But the cultural values are more important to me because I realize that that's like almost a precursor to dismantling the government, because there already is like a high trust society here. There's not a lot of violence. I think we're like one of the least violent states in the country. There's economic prosperity. Those are all prerequisites you need to dismantling the state that already exists. Because if you dismantle the state when you have a dysfunctional society, you're just going to end up with something else in its place that's just as bad. So I think it's good to like push your state in the right direction before or like at the same time, at least, as you're taking that power away from the federal government. But the true lesson everyone should get here is just move to New Hampshire, because Georgia's fucked up and Montana's not bad, and I don't know Pennsylvania so much, but yeah, just move to New Hampshire and it'll fix the problem.
The problem is Pennsylvania is like California and New York on the ends, and Alabama in the middle. So your mileage will vary.
So like I actually, and I think I agree with Will, but it seems like, Jacob, your thing is more about like relevance.
Everyone always gangs up on the Jews. What can I say? It's the Jews always in the minority getting shit on by all the white Aryans.
Is it more of like a relevance thing, or is it like you don't think it's as important of an issue, or do you fundamentally disagree with the whole idea? Like,
yes,
like you like you do think that marriage just like if it just stayed where it's at, that's better than legalizing gay marriage.
Yeah, I don't think legalizing gay marriage has actually helped, because I think it normalized the idea of, like, again, it continues to normalize the existence of the federal government, and it continues to normalize the idea of the way we increase the rights of people who are being oppressed is to put more laws in the books and to have this kind of like positive rights mentality that the government has to come in and give the rights to the people. And I just think that all of that is like, it's not like it's the slippery slope argument is just empirically true at this point. Whenever we use the government for anything, even if it's good in the short term, it will be turned around and used for destruction and
I think you're
the reduction of rights in the long term.
Conflating the government intruding on private property and private ownership versus the government impeding on itself. Like when the government is creating restrictions for itself, I don't think that does legitimize its existence anymore, or like
but it never stops there, Reed. It never just stops by restricting itself.
But see, that's kind of like why I brought the point up, is like, you're exactly right that it creates that mentality that the federal government is creating these rights for people. And they are, forgive me for calling it rights, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the perception of all these people is, well, without the federal government, I'm not going to be able to marry my spouse, or I don't have gun rights, or I will.
But I think the best solution for that is to promote more localism and to do like what Reed does. If you don't like where you live, move. You know what? If you live in New York and you don't like your,
I'm a farmer.
If you don't
I can't move. That's the thing. And there's a lot of other people that are like, no,
we got blueberries in Maine. Will he can move up here?
No, that's some bullshit. Wild blueberries. No, y'all don't get hot enough for the good ones. Rabbit eye blueberries.
Then fight to make Georgia better, but don't go to Washington D.C. and ask them. Don't go licking.
No.
Don't go do your fellatio on the foot of Washington D.C. to come and stomp down on the statists in Georgia.
Whoa!
No,
I'm
saying like
you totally flipped what he was saying. Yeah, he's saying Georgia, not what he's saying. Like he literally made the argument that you just made at the beginning. He was saying we should change Georgia so that people will be more willing to embrace decentralization and not rely on Washington D.C. anymore. That's exactly
change Georgia and like be specific. What do you want to do? Like, do you want to enshrine gay marriage in Georgia?
Like codifying that as like saying like, yes, we need legalized gay marriage on the state level in Georgia, and also like, some sort of legal structure to uphold like people's ability to freedom of speech and everything.
The question is always compared to what? Compared to the Supreme Court making gay marriage the law of the land, I would like that. That's better. That is a lot better.
We're getting there, Jacob.
But I also
everybody.
The only thing I would push back against there is that it's a bit of a false dichotomy to be like those are the only two options. Like,
I'm not saying it is. The other option is to be like, yeah, fuck them gay people. That's the thing.
No, the other options would be like, so like you could try to codify gay marriage, or you could try to say, you know what, how about we just try to, pass, make it so that the government can't impede upon private contracts, no matter what they're, trying to create between two or more consenting people. You know what I mean?
It's fair, but I think we got a longer road there, like a longer intellectual road to like get there. Like,
well, the short and easy road's always worked out for us, so
fair, but I honestly, I do think we're there, and there's a tendency, like with you Christian types. I'm not trying to point any fingers, but like y'all don't want to admit, like. Okay, fine. We have to support gay marriage just because like the lizard people are telling us to support gay marriage. We don't.
Well, I don't think it would be supporting gay marriage. It's just supporting private contract. Like I do agree with you on this from a legal perspective. And I am wondering, like, Jacob, because the preferred, even from my point of view, is getting rid of state marriage altogether. But would you? I am curious. Like,
I want to get rid of marriage in general. Like, nobody gets married.
There we go. I can support that.
But like, would you say that it would be? Is it better that straight people can get married, but it is a state license, but gay people can't? Or like, is that better than allowing gay people to get married while just as long? Like in the same way as straight people can. Like if they were to enshrine it at the state level and protect gay marriage, like it is protected for straight people, would that be worse?
You have to choose one or the other.
What the fuck? Okay, so if I'm understanding the question,
Jacob just doesn't want to be on tape saying, yes, I support gay marriage.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
The question you're asking, Liam, is do I think that straight marriage being enshrined by the government but not gay marriage is better than the government enshrining both?
Yeah.
It's like pulling fingernails.
I mean, like, I think they're both bad. I think that
and as marriage is currently defined with all of like the tax benefits and everything like that.
And they get the kiss.
To me, here's the thing. Your question might as well be asking me like if I'd rather vote for George Bush or John Kerry. It's just like, I don't know.
I don't
fucking care. They both suck.
Think about
I get the point of view, but like I do get what you're saying, but still there are tax and legal benefits.
They both have downsides. I don't know which downside is worse.
What's the downside to
the downside of enshrining both is what I've already said, which is like, we're further now. Even so let me take away, if we're doing it at the state level, if we're doing it at the state level and not the federal government level, okay, we're not normalizing Washington D.C. anymore, but we are normalizing the idea that government should be enshrining an equality in terms of like, everybody should have the right to do X. And
it's just equality before the law, because if you are required, like,
but then I'm already like accepting defeat in terms that like the government should be involved in marriage, and that like
no, it isn't, because like I mean, I'll go back to the driver's license thing. Even if you don't think there should be driver's licenses issued by the state, you don't think that there should be discrimination based on something other than driving ability in order, or like, let's say something other than a driver's license. Like if you wanted to get a hair cutting license and they were denying that to gay people, which would be a huge downside for the industry because they're the best people at cutting hair, like then it's like, wait, I can't cut hair, or not even gay. Like say if it's because you're black or because you're a man or like whatever prejudice they had, that they were not letting you get this license because of something other than your ability to cut hair.
You know what? I think it's better if the government has the ability to discriminate against those people. I will go there. Because then I think it encourages people to be more.
Why?
Because I think it encourages people to be more based about the evil of the state.
Do you wish that the government had passed vaccine mandates like federally, because then it would have encouraged people to rebel against the state?
Full accelerationism the whole way down, man.
Right. I respect it. As long as you're consistent on it.
Just to point out the irony of this, we started out with talking about how important it is to talk about like the most important issues like Yemen.
And now we're
talking
about
tweets
and
then gay marriage.
That's because Will keeps it. Will and Reed are trying to trap.
All you got to do is go like, yeah, that's probably a good point. And we could have been talking about all the dead babies in Yemen.
Listen, I am just autistic enough and just tipsy enough on blueberry wine to not concede the point that gays should be allowed to marry.
Yeah, well,
And
I
Jesus
think
wept.
I do. Don't take this the wrong way, but I save these chats for like the inside baseball dumb shit that no one else would talk to me about. Like that's what we talk about in these. We mix it in with some interesting stuff, but then we'll be like, voluntary cannibalism. There really is something here. Let's like really dissect this, no pun intended, and figure out where we go. So
I think I just came up with like an analogy that might work. It might not, but like so with VA healthcare. So this is an example where the state has promised veterans that they can have access to healthcare because they've served in the military. And it's like currently the somewhat libertarian argument and where more of the Cato types are focusing on is still having that US government funded healthcare, but being able to take that to other healthcare facilities, not just the VA. So like states are suggesting that veterans should be able to use those same funds to go to a private healthcare facility instead. And if I were to like use that same argument, it would be like, well, I wouldn't want them to go use those federal funds at a local hospital because I don't want to enshrine that type of welfareism. And you kind of want to accelerate and get people off that altogether. And to me, it's like, no, I hate government funded healthcare that much that like it's better that they still have federal funds.
I guess here's my line. It's like if I'm going to accept the trade-off of like the costs that come with accepting some state action, I have to believe that the juice is worth the squeeze. And I'm just not convinced on the matter of gay marriage that the juice is worth the squeeze on that. I would probably be more inclined to think that the juice is worth the squeeze fighting against the government telling gay people or trans people they can't have their driver's licenses. Because I think that is a great enough infringement upon liberty that you got to push back against it. But when it comes to something like gay marriage, it's just like I'm not thoroughly convinced that, that it's a substantial violation enough that it's worth fighting by trying to use any sort of state action. Like some things are infringements, but the best way to fight them is just the long-term push to decentralize all the way to just the government's not infringing upon private actors doing whatever they want. There are some things that are infringement enough to the point that like, yeah, we might have to push really hard to end the infringement, either by like maybe invoking the Constitution against the state of New York, maybe, or maybe like, banning or enshrining something at like a local state level as a stopgap measure. But it's got to be something that really meets that threshold, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I get your point to the extent that you're just arguing that it doesn't matter to you as much. But like for me, if we solve
it's not even just I don't think that's fair to say it just doesn't matter to me. It's just that like I don't see where, just objectively speaking, where the major, like again, other than the three things that we can talk about is that like, and I think the worst thing is that they might not be able to visit a spouse in a hospital or something. But I think there are lots of ways in which the market allows for ways to circumvent that, such as like adding them to your insurance policy or having them as like your power of attorney or etc. Other than that, it's like, okay, there's some tax things that you might not be able to have. But again, unless you have kids, being married and filing jointly actually hurts you in most cases. And then the other thing would be like, I don't know, like being able to adopt in the first place. But that's the adoption system in our country is just such a fucking convoluted mess anyway that it's like, it's again, it's too convoluted for me to think that's enough of a infringement that we need to put it this way. Like, gay marriage has been enshrined, and gay people have still been having a hard time adopting people, and straight people even have a hard time adopting people, because that whole entire sector is just so fucked up with all the government regulation and intervention. So it's just kind of like, do I really want to be layering state interventions upon state interventions in an attempt to kind of maybe achieve something quasi more libertarian, or is that not worth my time? And should we be focusing on things that I think objectively do more harm to a larger amount of people?
And that's what I mean by.
Hold on. I gotta just I gotta reference this comment. So someone says atheist libertarians want a high trust free society, but think they can get that without while taking out the Christian conservative values that are literally the foundation of this country and Western civilization. So, everybody, what is the freest state in the country?
And we're going down this road.
Yeah, well, which one is it?
You're New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Florida.
Here are the 10 states that are the least religious. Number 1, New Hampshire. Case closed. Sorry. So yes. I will say I get sick of this argument because
libertarianism is a religion. Case closed.
Well, no, this is just a dumb argument.
What does he mean?
There is no
free society. What does that mean?
There is no correlation between religion and freedom, and it doesn't go either way. Like, just because the most religious state is, I think the least free state is California, right? Which is, I think, a pretty atheist state as well. So, and then some of the states that are super religious are up on the more freedom scale, like Florida, and then some of them are way down, like Alabama. But my point is, like, there is no correlation. Religion literally has nothing to do with freedom, and I'm sick of people acting like it does, because you have some religious countries like Venezuela that are awful, and then you have some religious countries like the United States that are much better to live in. And then you've got
a point of agreement here. Like, this whole capitalist communion thing was founded because we were all kind of collectively like we have a lot of obviously different viewpoints and disagreements on these things, which is fun, right? But what we agree on is that, like, Christians and atheists and liberty movements having the never-ending spiral argument of, like, the liberty movement has an atheist problem, no, the liberty movement has a Christian problem, or whatever, is a distraction and nonsense. Because, like, you know what,
it has a faggot problem, which has nothing to do with being gay, by the way.
Yes, which is why I'm against gay marriage. No, but no, there are a lot of instances in history of Christians being absolute statists and authoritarian strongmen and using the Bible to justify this, some of the most horrific things in human history. There have also been atheists who have done the same thing, and trying to, like, calculate who, like, out of those two groups, which one has been worse is like a pissing contest I have no interest in getting in, because, like, you're just going to end up covered in piss. Like, there's nothing to gain from it. Like, what we need is, and this is like my pushback against the, like, hardcore edgy atheists and, like, the hardcore, like, paleo Christian conservatives, which is like, I'm sorry, like, you all have had your experiments with, like, hyper atheism, hyper Christianity, and, like, they fail. If you want a society in which rights are protected and a society in which violence is minimized, you have to learn to tolerate people who are different than you. And so, yeah, you need a high trust society, but to say that everyone has to have the same religion, well, first of all, that's empirically false, because we've had societies that all have the same religion and still end up being violent. Because, like, again, it's like, how much do you have to scale that out? Do we need one world government that's all Christian and forces everyone to be Christian? Because then it's like, unless you're advocating for that, then you're just going to have warring tribalism between people of different religions or people who are atheists. Like, no, like we have to evolve past that stupid petty tribalism. And like, listen, like I'm as Christian as it gets. I'm like a step removed from a fundamentalist, and I have really harsh critiques for atheism. But gosh, like you don't need, like an atheist can be a moral person who you trust in society and who you can have, atheists and Christians and Muslims and you can have gay people and trans people all in the same society and find a way to coexist without going to war with each other or trying to like initiate force to control the other group of people. And that's what we have to normalize. And you can normalize that from a Christian perspective, and you can normalize that from an atheist perspective, and you can normalize it from a faggot perspective. Like, I don't care, but like, that's what we need.
All right. Well, let's close on that. Will, just give like 30 seconds of closing thoughts and where people can follow you and buy your wine.
Right on. Yeah. Well, my closing thoughts is I love our capitalist communion, guys. Like it's one of the funnest things we get to do, and talking about that mission of us all, like being like atheists and Christians that come together and like are able to talk about these issues. I see the benefit in it, and I love it. I have a great time, and thank you, Reed, for always letting me come on here and play podcaster with you guys. It's great. It's great. But yeah, right here, Rabbit Eye Wine, rabbiteyewine.com. Please check it out. It's a 100% blueberry wine my family makes, and we sell online and in stores all throughout Georgia. So yeah,
50% chance if you drink blueberry wine, you'll go on angry anti-Christian evangelical rants like I have like 5 times this podcast.
There is a chance. Yeah. I distill my hatred towards theocracy in every bottle.
Yeah, this is heretical. I'm drinking the fruits of atheist labor, and it's corrupting me.
That's its intent, sir.
A bad tree can't bear good fruit.
Liam?
Yeah, I really love doing this. I'm glad we finally got to do it, and we have to make sure that we all get together in 2023. I mean, it's cool to be able to see Reed, Will, but Jacob, we need you there, and we need to do a live podcast too.
None of us have met Jacob ever, I don't think.
Right? Guys, come to Pennsylvania in March.
Hey, come invite us to speak. We'll all come and do a capitalist communion on the stage. That would be
all right. I'll make it happen.
There we go.
Well, yeah, everyone should check out the Mises Caucus's Ask an Austrian podcast. We revived it. We did like 3 podcasts a while ago with Bob Murphy and a couple others, but we just started it up, and we've released like 3 podcasts, I think. So it's been Per Byland, and then Jonathan Newman and Patrick Newman, and all 3 podcasts were great. And I think we just scheduled with Dr. Mark Thornton, and we're about to get Walter Block on. The whole idea is you submit questions on lpmisescaucus.org or .com, and they answer your questions live. So if you have any questions about libertarian theory, economic theory, Austrian economics, submit them there, and they'll answer your questions.
Jacob.
My name is Jacob Daniel, and I hate gay people. And no, so if you want to follow me, it's at Biblical Anarchy on Twitter. And I got some cool stuff coming up, but it's not going to be announced and put into action until probably November. So I'm going to be kind of low, the month of October. There's not going to be a whole lot on the podcast. I'm supposed to be having Spike Cohen on at some point, and other than that, I don't have much planned for the month of October. But stay tuned, because there's some big stuff in the works. Yeah, I mean, I love this group of people. It sucked that we weren't able to get the 4 of us together for a podcast for a while, and yeah, we definitely got to meet up in person. And yeah, no, I think that it's interesting to have 4 different people who have a lot in common, yet coming from different perspectives, and to, show that you can have these passionate, disagreements and agreements, and, walk away friends and allies on the stuff that matters the most. And I think, that's what we, that's what we have to normalize if we want not only the liberty movement to succeed, but if we just want libertarianism to succeed, is we have to foster that kind of goodwill and camaraderie.
Yeah. I don't know if he's watching, but Ryan Dawson just messaged me. Funny, my country has no Christians or mass shootings, trans lobotomies, or drug problems. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, I love this show. Like, we all disagree on stuff. Like, there's been moments when I'm siding with Jacob against Will, and then sometimes I think it was the first time we all ganged up on Liam on something like that. I don't think that's happened before, but
it broke
it's fun.
my heart.
Yeah, it's kind of. Well, by the way, Liam's cheeks look like extra rosy on the camera today. Like, I don't know if that's real life or if it's just yeah. But no, it's good. Like, I think libertarians have a problem of not being able to disagree without feeling like they're enemies. Like, I think it's fine to just actually disagree on strategy and actually disagree on what the best move is, and then let the market do its work. So, like, if someone has an idea that they think is going to work, I say go for it. And if someone has an idea of how to, like, advance liberty in their state, and other people are like, I don't know about that. Well, why don't you just go for it and see what works and try it, instead of everyone trying to micromanage everybody. And then if someone disagrees with you, they say, oh, fuck you. Or if, I don't know. I think we just have like a toughness problem. We take everything too personally. And this podcast is good because we do like strongly disagree on a bunch of stuff, but also agree on a lot of important stuff. So I hope people can learn from this and like try to bring more cohesion and camaraderie, and understanding that disagreement is part of having a relationship, a successful relationship with people. Like, you have to be able to disagree. But yeah, I am Reed Coverdale. I got all of our links listed in the description to everyone's YouTube channel and Twitter if they have one. Follow me on Substack and Telegram. And let's see, I'm going to Maryland to do a speech next Sunday. So I'll be there. I'll be posting more about that later. And yeah, happy holidays, everybody. I guess we'll end on that note.